Okay, Michael.
Okay, you're all set.
Okay, Michael may pop in, but why don't we just get started anyway? So we'll call the meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. Okay, first, public comment, communications with parents, citizens, staff. Is there any public comment?
Celeste, did you receive anything?
No.
And do you see anything on YouTube?
Nothing.
Okay.
We're not popular enough. Okay. And then seeing no public comment, maybe I could ask David as the vice chair to go through the norms. Unmute.
It would be my pleasure. I would do that. Anything to step on Dick's toes.
Dick always gets to do it with the TNG.
No, you're not. You're the vice chair. That's the role.
Oh, okay. Phew. So the BRSU board norms. We will start and end on time, maximum of 2 hours. We will be prepared for agenda items. The agenda will prioritize the most important issues. We will have time limits on agenda items. All members will have an opportunity to speak if they so choose. We will listen to who is speaking and focus on the issue at hand. And we will not micromanage the superintendent.
Okay, great. So now we can move on to the consent agenda, which includes the minutes for August 18th, September 4th.
I move the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
David? So Dick is the motion, David second. Okay, all in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Raise your hand or say no. Or no opposed. Any abstentions? Nope. Okay.
I had one comment on the minutes. It said that we were adjourned at 10 in the morning.
8 p.m. Right.
I mean, sorry, 10 p.m. and it was 10 in the morning.
It was 10 a.m.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that was on the August 18th.
yeah.
It was a really short meeting, not a really lean meeting. So
Right.
that's true.
I also, now that you've just approved that quickly, I feel the need to just draw attention to the fact that Laura Walkinshaw joined us today, and she is our new human resource director that you just approved the hire for. So I know many of you have been waiting, and I just invited Laura to join us this evening. I could not be happier about this hire. We are thrilled that she'll be joining us from Utah and starting with us mid-January, and we are just thrilled. So I just wanted to draw attention and congratulate Laura, and thank you for stopping in and being with us.
Are you going to commute from Utah?
A really long drive. I know some great back roads, so I should get there and on a pinch. But no, I'll actually be relocating. I'm very excited. I'm from the Capital District in New York. And so my family and my husband's family have anxiously been awaiting our return to the East Coast. And this is just they were thrilled. You all have made their 2020, which was a wretched year for them. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm very excited to work with all of you.
Welcome to the BRSU, Laura.
I was looking for the connection to here, but didn't see it. And I like to hear it's always useful for us. Okay. The next is incidental information handed over to Sue on the fiscal 21 anticipated.
All right. So talk about,
Randy?
I'm sorry.
Where to Randy, whoever, Yep.
She'll pass it to me.
Okay.
Talk about FY20 for a sec, where we landed at the end of last year. So we were anticipating to end the year with a fund balance of 111. We ended the year with 197. So in a favorable position. A chunk of that is due to not having a human resources director for as much of the time as we expected during the year. And a chunk of that is, operations. You guys were seeing this in the local budgets that COVID hit, and things were not as operating as usual. So there were places where we didn't need to spend money where we typically would have spent money. So there are savings sort of spread out along lines in the budget. We also got a little extra revenue from workers' comp premium return based on our payroll for the year and the rates that we were originally charged. That's a settle up we do at the end of every year. And sometimes we get money back. Sometimes we have to pay a little in.
Isbit?
Yep, right through Bisbit. Yep. So you guys also were aware at the end of last year that we couldn't operate our buses for the transportation contract after COVID hit. And so we had some savings there. They did reduce our contract towards the end of the year. They had not reduced the contract initially, but then they ended up laying off their employees so the employees could collect unemployment, as so many employers did across the country, because employment was giving people a higher wage than their regular wages were. So due to that, they reduced our contract. We negotiated an agreement, and that was, I think, beneficial to both of us. And we continue to contract with them for this year. So that savings is passed on directly to the districts. It's not something that's shown in our budget because it's a wash, right? We pay the bills and then we bill the districts. All right, so anticipated. Again, we expect to be saving a little bit of money this year. You know, my first paragraph's kind of talking about, or second paragraph talking about that we continue our search for our new human resources director, which has now finally ended, which, as Randy said, we're all thrilled about. So we're not expecting any savings due to that position itself not being filled right away. But we did not fill the assistant superintendent's position this year. You guys were aware of that. And we do intend to fill it for next year, but we are going to experience savings because we didn't fill the position this year. And we have a couple places where we have some changes in spending that I'm sure you guys have seen when you looked at the numbers, and we can walk through any questions that you might have on that.
I was curious on the software stuff where, we changed software systems for student assessment, and so we are paying a bit more for the new system, but are we saving from the old one?
So that's a big one. Yeah. So that variance that you're seeing is actually the extra amount of money that we are going to spend on the new system. The offset's already in there for the old systems. And so it is a big one. I'll let Randy speak to that.
Right. So this decision was not made lightly as we, kind of explored our options last spring. But iReady is the new system. The assessment, the reporting data is so much better, so much more user-friendly than what we had with NWEA for teachers and for families. So that piece of it's huge. And then the way that it links to instructional practices for kids in programming is it allows for a student's assessment data to be driving instruction for them, so that it looks at skills they should have and what they, and then provides lessons for them designed to where they've got holes in their current skill level in order to prepare them to be at grade level as they move ahead. So what it offers is something more than what we've had available in the past. And we really felt like the investment right now, given everything we're going through, was worth the cost. It was not, as I said, done lightly at all, but we felt like it was the right thing for learning for our students. And so we moved forward with it.
How long before we judge that this system didn't measure up to what we think it should do? Skylar talked about the difficulty of taking old data, especially because the data last year was somewhat skewed, and linking it up to the iReady. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you've described before the advantages of the system, but my hope is that we'll stay with it for a number of years to really give it a shot and figure out what it's missing so that we can possibly do something with that.
Sure. I don't expect to abandon this anytime soon. Exactly as you said, I'm saying, in my mind, I would say we're looking at 3 to 5 years before even really reviewing whether or not we would walk away from it. One of the, we got our initial data for the fall, but we had no context for it. And we all knew that we expected for student performance to be lower this year, the start of this year, than in the past because of what occurred instructionally last spring. Still, when we got the information, for me, the question was, what does this mean? So I asked Skylar to go back to iReady. I said, can you please ask them to give us their national norm data from last fall, and for them to give us their national norm data for this fall to date with whatever they've got. That will give us a sense of, when they look nationally from last fall to this fall, what happened, and then how do we compare to that? So we just recently got that information. We're looking into it, but it gives me a context that we haven't had before, and then that will serve as our initial platform. We'll also have growth data that comes in. We'll be doing our second testing window starting the beginning of February. That will give us our next data point. And over the course of the next, I have to ask, I'm not entirely sure Skylar's timeline, but the next little while we'll be comparing kind of the big picture data to NWEA. So hopefully all of that information helps triangulate us moving forward. But I was glad that we were able to obtain that additional information. I think it will help us.
Is this system a system which is particularly adaptable to lots of different levels of instruction, much more so than the old system?
Yes, completely. That's one of the biggest benefits. It meets students where they are and then adjusts and helps them to continue to grow based on where they currently are.
Do we think that we can use the sort of growth data from NWEA as a comparison to the iReady?
I'm not sure yet.
Yeah. Okay. Other questions on the fiscal 21 anticipated? Okay. Well, that's just a presentation item. Okay.
I
So
think,
now, yeah.
Jim, there was one more thing we just wanted to bring your attention to on packet page 18. We did a little summary of staffing, just so that you can get an idea of what we're looking at. And we thought it would be best to combine the big changes that are happening within both the general budget and the special ed budget. And I know you're not looking at the special ed budget yet, but just to gain an understanding of where the FTEs and the costs are, because there is a little bit of a shift there. And I think we don't want you to be surprised when we bring the FY22 general budget to you and you see a large increase. You're going to see a corresponding decrease on the special ed budget. And we just wanted you to sort of be aware of what that might look like. So we started, just thought it would be good to preemptively start sharing that information here.
Wait, could you fill that in a little bit more? That's because the SPED budget, some of those costs are going to be on the SU budget.
I think it's probably best for Randy to explain sort of her thinking on this.
Okay.
So what I've done when I was initially hired last winter, I said to those people on the committee and to you as a board, I wasn't really sure what the work was going to be of an assistant superintendent at the time, and that I didn't want to jump into that and basically just fill the position without really having a sense. Well, obviously all of that changed with COVID. And so what's happened for me over the last 6 months is to be looking at our overall system and positions and work, and to start to really define that role of an assistant superintendent. In order to do that, I looked at some of the work that people were already doing in our office. And in my mind, I don't necessarily separate it out by the special ed budget and the BRSU general budget. I look at the work and I look at the people we have, and I start moving things. Because for me, that's the way I approach it, is the workload, the skills, the efficiency of work. And then I turn it to Sue and I say, this is what I want to do. And she starts to parse it all out. So one of the changes is that we had an early education coordinator that was also a part-time early ed teacher. In communicating with our central office leaders here, I would like to move that early ed coordinator position into the student service, what is currently now the student service director of student services, and have that position cover special education, 504, ELL, and early education. Right now, that position has a whole lot of little kind of tentacles of random leadership work attached to it, I think that it will be more efficient and more effective to kind of hone it into those areas and then pull out some of the additional work that the student service, that special student services director is doing and move that into the assistant superintendent work. So that's where some of that, what Sue's referring to as far as moving from special ed to gen ed, the BRSU budget is happening, but the position numbers is essentially staying similar to what was budgeted.
Yeah, and I think the other piece to that is that right now, if you think about what we budgeted for FY21, so we budgeted for only a 0.4 assistant superintendent because that's what we had last year, right? We had Randy was a 0.6 director of student services and 0.4 assistant superintendent. So when we move into budget for FY22, we're going to be doing a 1.0 student services director and a 1.0 assistant superintendent. So it's basically doubling that position, but as Randy said, we're reducing administrative positions elsewhere. So when all is said and done, if things stay as they're shown here, which of course we haven't finished going through all the budgets and making all the plans for what we're going to share with you in December yet, this is just preliminary, but we would still have a reduction of a 1.0 between the two budgets.
Dick?
Since special education is really fixed by people way beyond us, it's fixed by the federal government and the state government. Is the reimbursement when we put positions into the general budget, does that change because the special ed stuff gets covered by special ed funding?
Well, the special ed budget, the positions in the special ed budget, some of them are grant funded. And so if we free up some of the positions in the special ed budget that were grant funded, that allows us to fund other positions with those grant funds, right? So there's no loss there. Some positions are funded partially through reimbursement. And so the reduction in costs on the special ed side, maybe that net effect of what we're not getting from the state. So it's not the full effect. That's what makes it very difficult to present sort of a net bottom line of what savings might actually look like or spending might actually look like. And I played with that when I was first putting this together for you and chose not to try to figure that out at this point in time. We can when we get closer, but it's complicated and it's quite a puzzle to try to put those pieces together. And since we're not sure where we're going to land yet, I thought it was best to leave that to when we are sure. But you're right, there is an impact on special ed reimbursement. I think the larger picture here, though, is that because we're talking about mostly administrative positions, they are funded through mostly IDEA, the federal special education grant that we get. And so if we reduce the number of positions, we're just going to take that money and fund additional, we're going to funnel that grant money to other positions in the budget. So we're not going to lose that grant money, and then the special ed budget still sees that savings.
Thank you.
Question, the fiscal FY22 placeholder numbers in costs, those are all in costs?
Yeah, they're all in, and they're my best quick guesstimate right now.
Okay. Good. All right, looking, so we always like to be ahead, even if it's for strange reasons. So thanks, it looks good. Any other questions or thoughts on that? All right. So we move on to governance process and approved memorandum of agreement to teacher master contract.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
David?
Jane can do it. She jumped in too. You can give it to Jane.
Okay, well then Deb,
Okay.
fine. Okay, or Jane or whoever. Anyway.
Are we going with Jane? Are we going Jane for that one? Okay.
Okay. Good.
This has already happened, so
Yeah.
if we don't approve it, we're kind of in a bad place.
Yeah, and we've, it was approved at the T&G as well. But so,
And Medowee.
pardon me?
And
And
Medowee.
Medowee, right? So any discussion on this memorandum of agreement? Everybody's pretty easy here. Okay. So let's go with hand raises. So all in favor of approving the memorandum of agreement, please raise your hand. Okay.
I'm
that
raising my
looks-
hand, but you can't see it. I
Oh,
promise
Dean,
it's
yeah,
up there though.
yep.
Good.
Okay, great. So that's unanimous. Good. Okay, the revised personnel benefits.
So moved.
Who wants a second?
Second.
Corey? Okay. Now, maybe a quick intro to, obviously changing with the statewide, negotiations, but you could maybe, give us the highlights on this. That would be useful.
Sure. The real primary change is related to the row titled health insurance.
Yep.
And for these are for non-union, non-contracted employees that with the new change in state healthcare coverage, employees are eligible for all plans and tiers of coverage. And so that's what's now included in here, effective January 1st, 2021.
Okay. Any question?
What's the sign up level? Have we experienced massive new signups?
To be honest, Dick, I have not looked. I'm deliberately not looking because we have so much to do that I'm waiting until I have to look. We put it out to everybody 2 weeks ago, and we're sort of on a plan to try to get everybody to make a decision on healthcare by the end of the month. And then we're going to switch gears and get our other benefit plans, get them enrolled in all the other benefit plans that they have options to enroll in: HSAs, HRAs, flex plans. So we sort of have a timeline, and
Okay.
I haven't had a lot of questions yet. I've probably only talked to probably less than 10 people who have reached out to sort of clarify some things on the information we've shared, but I think it's also a little early. I think that over the holiday, when people are home and they're over break, they'll probably start to really think about this and digest the information. So we're just going to keep moving through it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
The question, people who had an HSA before, can they continue with that?
Only if they stay or move to the silver CDHP plan. Otherwise, they are stuck with an HRA. And in reality, because of the way the state negotiated the agreement, it really doesn't matter, HRA, HSA, the employer benefit will be the same regardless of whether you choose an HRA or an HSA. The only benefit to the HSA is you would get to contribute to it yourself and help your own savings plan along. It's unfortunate that the employer contribution to the HSA is not handled the way an HSA was intended. It was set up to be handled a certain way. And unfortunately, right now, we're treating it just like it's an HRA. So.
Any other questions on the revised personnel benefits? Okay, all those in favor of approving the revised personnel benefits, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Yep, Dean, and Dean, you say it. Okay, that looks like everybody. Okay, so that's unanimous. All
Because
right.
it's mandated by the state, we can't change the language. We can't reduce the 89,000 words in this policy. I move we adopt it, or do whatever the first step is.
Well, didn't we already have a motion for that?
So I think that Dick just jumped to the Title IX policy, and
Okay.
he's moving that you approve the Title IX policy.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Is there a second on that Title IX?
Looks like Jane.
Jane? Yeah.
So yeah, so this is a mandatory policy for updating Title IX. we've also gone over this at the other, at Meadowy and Connick and Green. There were a couple
Jane,
of,
did you have something you wanted to say on it? Okay, okay. Yeah, we have a few now. This one is the first approval, so it'll be coming back next time for the adoption. But so all in favor of approving the prevention of sexual harassment as prohibited by Title IX policy, please raise your hands, or Dean say yes. Dean?
Yes.
Okay, great. Keep us in suspense. Okay, so that looks unanimous. Okay, the next policy. Go ahead, Dick.
I move we adopt the mandatory electronic communications between employees and students.
Okay, is there a second on that? Deb? Deb Linus, Dick motion, Deb Linus, second. Okay, we did approve this the last time, so here's adoption for it to, go.
Okay, I move we adopt it.
Yep.
Second.
Oh, Dean.
Okay, so Dean second. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of adopting the policy, please raise your hand, and Dean, let us know.
Aye.
Okay, so that's unanimous. All right, so we're moving quickly through, and legislative updates. Which did you want to give anything, or did?
why don't you get started, Jim, with it?
Okay, there are a couple of things. One, I told the TNG board, but wanted to tell the BRSU board too, that at the VSBA annual meeting, they did approve our proposed resolution on communication, on Wi-Fi access. So that's now in place at the VSBA as one of the things the VSBA should be looking to make
Nice.
make some room on. There are a variety of other resolutions too. It's kind of worth, taking a look at those. I think everybody might have seen it at there was a review of all the proposed resolutions, and basically the ones that it pretty much went along the lines of the recommended. There was, I think, one that the district changed the wording a little bit, so it was not recommended, but then it moved into the recommended column. But it's worth looking at that. Let's see. As I said at the beginning of the meeting, I don't know if everybody was here, but we're expecting continued push from several different groups on the weighting studies, implementation of the weighting studies. Essentially, I just attended before this meeting a meeting that was put together by the Burlington School District, and I told them I didn't think this was the greatest idea in the world. They went out to the districts that seemed to have the most financial advantage from getting the weighting in place. They said that's not going to be representative of all districts, but they're trying to get a group together to push down in Windham County. There are a variety, including one of the legislators from down there that's pushing on the weighting study. There is an important point in that the first time the Joint Fiscal Office put together, here's what the financial impact is going to be. They've done it twice now, and they're about to do it a third time. And my recollection is the first time and the second time, the results were significantly different. And the third time, might again be different. So we're gonna want to kind of keep our eyes on that. And I suggested to this group that they took a look if there's a new, it's interesting how people were extremely transparent on, they said, well, this is going to help us a lot, financially. So that's why we want to push it and get it approved. And the VSBA took a position on it that, okay, there are winners and losers, so the legislature should work to set an implementation plan with set timeframes for implementation. But doing it all at once would I think be extremely disruptive. So does that square up with what you guys think, Sue? And
I could jump in just with a couple of more comments on this. So for those of you who don't have an understanding of it, there was this big study conducted by the University of Vermont to look at the current funding formula and felt like it was really inequitable to many towns and districts. And so out of the study came recommendations for new weights on a number of factors that would impact cost to educating students. So when the initial numbers were run, they were based on FY18 numbers. And so for the BRSU, we had the Mountain Town Red, we had UD 23, we had UD 47, we had individual town districts. And so I have a spreadsheet that has all of our numbers, and there are wide variability, as you can imagine, if you think about all of our towns. We had some that from a tax rate perspective would be winners. And we have some, Dean, that would not be winners and everything in between. So at this point, I'm eager to see the work that the Joint Fiscal Office is doing under the mergers, because I'm unclear about what the impact is going to be for our communities. And I think it's important for you as board members, all of us, to have an understanding of that. If I were to tell you sort of the 3 communities within our system that under the current modeling are hit the worst from a tax perspective, those communities are Winhall, Rupert, and Manchester. And then it kind of goes down from there. There are others that are pretty significantly hit as well. And then we have some that benefit. So what I spoke with Jim about was, we're fully expecting the legislature to take this up as a pretty intense topic this next session. So there's going to be a lot of discussion. There's going to be a lot of, I expect, back and forth, and this is going to be one of the bigger topics related to education. So my thought was that, February or March, getting together a presentation for the boards so that you can, have an overview of the weighting study. We can have an overview of what it looks like for our towns. I think that, what I certainly struggle with is we want to fund education in an equitable way. I certainly want to make sure that our communities have what they need to fund education. And I understand and I agree with the changes that are being made. We also have to balance that with looking at what that means for our districts and the tax rate, and that will be the work for us. And right now, just not sure what that is.
And if I can just add to that, Jim, what you were talking about having a more phased in approach versus just moving to this immediately, to not have a phased in approach, it would be it could be catastrophic for some tax rates, obviously for some districts. And it isn't typical for how they operate when they make this kind of a big change. They do typically do a phase in where there perhaps won't allow your numbers to change by a certain percentage, knowing that that's a hit each year until you get to where you need to go, similar to how we merged our tax rates when we merged under Act 46. So I would hope that they would continue common practice and do something phased in.
The other factor to consider that I feel like the need to actually just drop in here is that the special ed census block grant funding is also going to be layered on top of this. And so it will be very interesting to see how people are going to be looking at the timing of implementation and the phasing in of the census block on top of potentially this one. So there's a lot to really pay attention to and a lot to be on top of as we look forward over the next few years.
Act 173 or?
Yes, Act 173, exactly.
And just so we're clear, Randy, we're talking FY23 for both of these, right? So FY22 is the year we're budgeting right now, which is not the year we're talking about having any of this go into effect.
Correct. I don't believe there's a date that's been established for waiting study yet.
Not yet,
Hasn't.
right?
So, but FY23 for Act 173 and the
And-
new special ed funding.
Right. And so we would expect that if waiting happens during the next legislative session, if they finalize it, then there's likely it would happen. The first year we would be impacted by it would be FY23, but we're not concerned about this for FY22, which is the year we're moving into voting for budget, because obviously we're voting budget right now. So these things, they can't happen just yet. So.
Which I think makes a lot of sense. Jane, yeah.
I just had a question. I am listening, but Randy, I missed, I think, the third term that you used, the factor. Was it, did you say like the census having to do with
Census
this?
block grant.
Okay.
So that's the new way of funding special education under Act 173. And as Sue noted, that goes into effect with FY23.
Thank you.
So as Dick was talking earlier about the reimbursement, that's all going away for FY23.
Good.
Deb?
I just have a question. Did I read that we will not be penalized for our average daily membership for COVID declines in enrollment? Is that something they've decided for sure?
Yeah.
So what is it, a rolling average or last year's or what?
It's
won't-
yeah, go ahead. Sue.
It won't go below our prior year. So if our numbers go up, then we're fine and our numbers will get to go up. But if our numbers are going down, we won't go beneath last year's numbers.
That's good.
Yeah.
That was a big one. Yeah. Okay, that's kind of all I had in the legislative. Other people, anything? Guess not. Okay. Grievance update. We're going to need a executive session request to go over the grievance. We don't have any. I think we
have to turn off the recording.
Yep.
Celeste,
and we
you-
don't have any.
I move.
So we don't have to worry about that.
I move we go into executive session for the purposes of discussing, I guess, a grievance.
Okay, is there a second on that? Okay, we got Corey get this one. Okay, now Celeste, do you want to put us into a different room?
Yes, hold on 1 second.
Bye, everybody.
Right?
Bye, Sue.
So you guys are all invited to join the room.
Okay, Celeste, we're back. I think everybody's back.
Okay.
You're muted, Jim.
Do you want to start recording it, Celeste? I know
Yes.
it's okay, perfect.
Jim, you're muted.
All set.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Okay. So we're back to reflect on norms. We don't need to do that. David read them at the beginning. If anybody wants any comments on, we certainly finished in less than 2 hours. I think we were prepared and I think we had the important issues. So if anybody has any issues, based upon did we follow the norms, feel free. Okay, and with no public, we aren't going to have any public comment. Next meeting date, December 7th. We're in budget time. So unless anybody, if anybody has anything to say, feel free. Otherwise, I'll
Move for adjournment.
bingo. Okay, second. It's Jane got that one. Okay, all in favor of adjourning, Dean, say it, and everybody else raise their hand.
Yep.
Okay, we got everybody, I think. Okay, great. So thanks, everybody. Good meeting.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, absolutely. And it's great to have, I'm really pleased to have the HR position filled. I think that's going to make a big difference for you guys.
Me too. Celeste, do you want to stop recording?